Hi, good evening, everyone, and good morning to those logged in from outside of India. We're just going to wait for a minute and allow more people to join, and then we'll formally begin this session. At this point, if any of you would like to start a watch party from your personal handles on Facebook, you can do that. Okay, the link is here. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Indie and the Gang, as we decided to call this session. I'm personally really excited because this is an opportunity for me to sort of take a little break from speaking with dancers and connect with musicians. Um, this is sort of the hook for this conversation is the World Music Day, but honestly, it's just an excuse to bring together a group of fantastic musicians and have a conversation with them on a whole bunch of things on how independent music has sort of shifted the road ahead, their personal journeys and experiences. So in my usual style, just before I begin, I try to kind of do some research and pull out a quote that I'd like to share. And today when I did a random search on 50 epic quotes on independent music, there were so many, but this one particularly struck me. And somebody famous obviously said, if you decide you want your life to be about music, you just have to decide that you will not give up ever. Everything else will change a million times, go up and down. But no matter what, you will continue on your journey. Accept that you have no control of anything except for your actions. It is always a journey. I thought it was great because, in a certain way, as a freelancer, I've been a freelancer for the longest time, and as a journalist as well. Like, nothing really is in control, right? And we're going to be talking a lot about that. And the English dictionary, for example, defines independent as one who's free from outside control, not subject to another's authority. In a sense, I think an independent musician is a lot like that. uh, they're creators, marketers, and therefore also entrepreneurs, all rolled into one. And while the autonomy and the buzz of it can be really wild and liberating on the one hand, I'm sure it also comes with its own set of challenges, insecurities, and we're going to be talking about that as well. I also thought this conversation is important because we're all poised in a precarious sort of time. The production and the consumption of the arts has sort of undergone a seismic shift in the last couple of years, thanks to the wretched pandemic. And yet, if Forbes magazine is to be believed, a report last year says that the independent artist sector is growing at a notable pace. It says that the rise of empowered independent artists is transforming the global music industry. Much like streaming altered the distribution of music, the study reveals that individual artists are redefining music creation and the fairness of compensation. The world's 3.7 million independent artists, and all of you are part of that, is a diverse group including rising stars who are attracting larger audiences and progressing label deals. But independent musicians are actually the fastest growing segment of the global recorded music business. Like I said, just as the world gears up to celebrate World Music Day, I don't know in the current context what that means. Honestly, like I said, this is just a hook to bring together some wonderful musicians like all of you from across the country and the world, and to have a conversation under the umbrella of Indie and the Gang. Very warm welcome to all the musicians here. Amira Gill, who joins us, who's originally from Delhi but is joining us from Goa. And we hope Goa internet doesn't let us down. Amrit Ramnath from Chennai. Apoorva Krishna from Bangalore. Rohith Jayaraman from San Jose. And Sumesh Narayanan from Chennai. Warm welcome, guys. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation and coming on board spontaneously. Thank you. I'm going to sort of. I originally thought we'll do a little icebreaker, and have you all dance or sing a little. But then I've decided to just skip that part and deep dive straight. So Sumesh, I mean, we did an alphabetical order gig, and we introduced you at the end. So I'm going to reverse the entire thing, and I'm going to start this conversation with you, Sumesh. A warm welcome again, and I want to start off by asking you. When we use the word independent, what does it really mean for you? What is it like being one, not being attached to a label, not having a manager, not having a steady income? It's almost like being an entrepreneur, no? Could you just talk a little about that?
Yes, Akila. Thank you so much for having me first. And first off, hey everyone, lovely to see a lot of friends and also some new faces and make some new friends. Yes, Akila. So, like you said, I liked how you actually gave a gist about what independent meant, and from going to, from being meaning to something like unsigned, or someone who's not under a certain platform or who's not under a certain ages or something like that. Independent being, giving you an opportunity to probably create your own music. But I think it's grown to a place where thoughts and expressions of creators and artists, in any form, are able to really just work on whatever it is they want to, and they have access to their audience, which in some cases is the entire world. In most cases is the entire world. And when days where you had to make pilots and you had to have some sort of a demo, so to speak, and to have that click, and sort of vibe with whoever it is that you are seeking support or guidance from, to like you spoke about a lot of these streaming platforms like Spotify and DistroKid and CDBV, and a lot of these middle agencies, so to speak, that facilitate this process for you. It's really, really crazy, because now it's really independent, because you don't have to depend on anything. And that is something that's at least because I belong to this period and I just put out my first song. And to think of how easy the process was and how easy it was to get my song to someone who'd like to listen to something like that was just mind-blowing. And I think the era is here and it's only going to get bigger.
Thank you, Sumesh. I think I've sort of started this conversation with a blooper. I'm sorry I forgot to welcome MS Krishna from Chennai. Krishna, warm welcome. Sorry about that. My the brain goes into a state of fog sometimes, and I kind of lost track. So my next question is to you, Krishna. I'm going to ask you about you have an active career in cinema, and I know that we also wrote that this morning when we posted, we said that a film for which you kind of composed a track in Kannada went on to win a national award. Am I right? No?
So I have to correct you. The composer was Bindu Malini, and I actually arranged a song from the movie. Yeah.
That's right.
And so, that did go on to win, and it's a wonderful soundtrack by her for the film Nati Charami. I think everybody should check that out.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to that today. I want to ask you really about, does it help for you as an independent musician to also have a steady career in cinema? Because your bio also mentioned that you work closely with a whole bunch of other music composers as well who perform for cinema. So I want to ask you, does that the fact that you have this steady gig going with cinema, does that help in terms of, in terms of a steady income, right? Many years ago, I read this really interesting advertising theory called the cash and the sex theory, which is basically like you get the cash from one place and then you go on to pursue like what you really love. So does it sort of help to have this steady gig going?
So I like to divide my time between the sort of work that I do as a session player and arranger for projects for film and for non-film content that I produce as I work as a producer. And yeah, definitely the financials of it definitely help and everything. But more than that, I got a really deep appreciation for independent expression from working in film music, and I was also an assistant director for a film for 3 years.
That's right.
So I just learned that before a song gets out through a film, it goes through so many stages and so many approvals and so many cogs in the wheel that have to turn the right way for you to get something that you artistically expressed to see light of the day. And that was a huge shock and like big learning for me, because that makes me respect the people who put out amazing film work even more. Like yesterday, I think, was 20 years of Lagan. So I don't know how many different iterations of music Rahman sir would have done.
Gone
And
through.
like to get it passed on through so many people, like a producer, like an actor, they have to like it, these people have to like it, it has to be commercially viable. Through all this to create something that stands the test of time, and that finally begins and connects with something that you initially started as a small idea, like just like something that you thought would be cool. It's like a huge process. And that makes me like sort of get wilder with my independent music. Like, like this is my space. Like I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, like
Yeah.
if I'm gonna experiment with something, I'm just gonna go all out, and there's nobody who can tell me whether it's right or wrong. And that's
But
why I
does it
love
help
so
to
many of
sort
the
of,
artists here. Like,
but does
yeah,
it
sorry,
help
I
to
just want to mention,
always,
like I heard Intuition and Manam. Like I think that fabulous work, and I just love it. And I'm so happy to meet you guys today. And all the others, like I work with them and I know them, so like they're amazing musicians as well. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
yeah. But Krishna, does it help to sort of also understand how a team works, and then also to sort of learn to sort of work also on your own?
Definitely. So the thing in film is the sheer quantity of work is incredible. So if you have 7 reels and 20 minutes a reel, minimum 10 to 12 minutes of that is filled with music. And so that's nearly like 1.5 hours of music that you've got to produce. And working with a team and working as part of a team is a wonderful learning experience. And I've gotten the great fortune of working with some amazing composers.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing to have a team of musicians to collaborate with as well. Yeah.
Lovely. Um, uh, Amira, hi. I want to ask you, Amira, at what point?
Hello.
Hi. Amira, I want to ask you a little bit about it. What point, what was that sort of trigger? Everybody has a trigger and sort of that moment when you kind of decide that you want to, uh, be on your own, be an independent musician. I'm just curious to know what was that sort of turning point? Or did you always sort of work your way to kind of, did you always know that you wanted to sort of be an independent musician?
So for me, it wasn't so planned. And just, for everyone to know, if I suddenly disappear, it's the Goa Wi-Fi. It's nothing to do with the Zoom call. But anyway, so yeah, it was not, I didn't really plan that I wanted to be an independent musician. I was so young now when I think about it, when I got into doing music professionally or being in the indie music scene. I would just dream that I wanted to be a part of a band and be performing in front of, so many people. And I had seen bands that I admired at that time, like Advaita and stuff like that. So my intake into the indie music world was when I was 14. And it was with a band called The Incredible Mindfunk. And I didn't even think about it. I didn't know that it's going to be, it's the indie scene, it's independent music that, pays you this much, what do shows do, how do you interact with people, blah blah. So it was really just by chance that it happened. And I was really the baby of that band, so it was like learning on the go and understanding what's going to happen. And then of course everything that's happened after that has been not exactly related to the first experience, but definitely I understood, okay, what does the Indian independent scene look like? What does it mean to be an independent artist? And so I think the decision to go back to it wasn't so much to do with, it's purely to do with the sense of gratification you get creating something that's your own, and the whole process that you get to be a part of with other musicians, and when you give it to the world and how they receive it. But yeah, for me, it wasn't when I started off, it wasn't
planned.
premeditated thought.
Yeah.
No,
Lovely.
not at all.
Um, Amrit, I want to ask you a little bit about in the last, I think 18, yeah, couple of years maybe. We've really heard you, share so much interesting music on social media. What was that moment when you decided that you'd go all out and like actually start like sharing your music with the world?
Firstly, Akila, thank you so much for having me on this panel with some of my closest friends and phenomenal musicians. I've heard all of your work, and I'm also huge admirers of each one of you. I think the plunge, so to say, happened right after I finished school, because that was when I had time by myself outside of school-related work to focus on music and spend time with myself and music, of course. I also spent time with my mother, who I learned from, and I finishing school gave me the opportunity to do that. And right after school, I took a gap year, so I didn't directly go into an educational institution. And then I decided to study my entire graduation, I mean my bachelor's through an external format. So I kind of did it offline, but from home. So I mean, all of that kind of culminated into a long process which I'm still going through, which involved creating different kinds of music from that stemmed out of different experiences that I kind of had along the journey. So I can't really pinpoint, but I think right after school is when I took the plunge.
Right. Have you been enjoying it? I mean, the
Absolutely,
ride been like?
absolutely. This is a completely voluntary decision, of course, to
Yeah,
be a musician.
of course. Yeah.
Um, so I definitely enjoy it. And
Yeah.
I think yeah, to support what you asked, I wasn't very clear about the about taking this journey, because of course there are so many so-called obstacles that you face, but
Yeah.
that's there in every journey, right? So you pick your battles and you decide to stick with them. And I feel like music at the end of the day is something that satisfies me more than anything else. So creating music and being in that sort
Yes.
of space of or environment is
Yeah.
something that's very quintessential to my kind of being. So it
Lovely.
happened naturally. So yes, I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, we're very glad to have like so many. I mean, I sometimes think that, we've all sort of gotten through this pandemic. I mean, I hate to say this, and I know that a lot of people do not like, are not big fans of social media, but I am one. And it's really helped me. Like every morning I wake up and like people are sharing stuff, and it's really kind of helped us move forward, is what I think. Like I mean, independent musicians have created so much fantastic, phenomenal work and put it out there and really kept us, going. So kudos to all of you. Hi, Apoorva. Apoorva, I want
Hi,
to ask
Akila.
you a little bit about, you had the opportunity of performing with some greats, I want to ask you, you graduated from Berkeley as well. What was it like to sort of, you know, did you, obviously when you went to Berkeley, you knew that you were going to be pursuing a career in music.
Right.
So the decision to become an independent musician was obviously a very well planned, deliberate one. So, what has that ride been like? Could you just sort of take us through it?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. Wonderful musicians, wonderful friends. Some of you are like my best friends, actually. And a lot of what we're talking about today, I talk about these things with my friends. Some of you here as well. And, it's so nice to be talking about it here as well. So, as you said, being a musician was something that was definitely a planned decision, but being an independent musician was not initially the plan, right? So when I went when I went to Berkeley, it was just, to explore for a year, right? And probably just keep doing what I do, but just appreciate. But I think once I went there, it was not only just appreciating, but being a part of, these experiences and like being a part of where people are coming from, right? And all of that. So that's what really without realizing seamlessly, I kind of got into it, and it initially genuinely was a shock, because it was, I never played with instruments like, bass guitar or harp or anything for that matter, right? Or I never arranged anything with those instruments or made such music that had things like that, or influences from other worlds and cultures and backgrounds. And but I think slowly as time went by, and when each song was actually that I started to make or create, they were all experiences in itself, and each song had a story as to when I met someone, this happened, or when I listen to this music, that through that inspiration, like something happened. And there was no process, there was no plan, it was a mess, but it was a beautiful mess where I didn't know what was happening, but things were happening. And I think, yeah, I started to realize the difficulties and challenges as well later on, not during that process. After actually graduating, and when I realized that, okay, when I was thinking about releasing all the music and the whole intuition thing, that's when I was realizing how much there is to putting things out. And the process really starts also from after having the recording and all of that done, right? And so I think that was a huge learning experience for me, and that showed me a lot more sides to this indie industry, because I'm quite new to it. And what as much as I know it's so challenging and it comes with so many responsibilities, I think what I think of to calm myself down is that the best thing about it is that we have that creative control, and no borders or boundaries for anything, and we can just be our purest selves in the most natural way. And I think that's what gets me through the frustration at times when we end up having to do everything by ourselves.
No, absolutely. Being your own boss, right? I mean, creative boss.
Yeah.
I definitely think that is a privilege, actually. Um, you know. Um, Thanks, Apoorva. Rohit, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Rohit. Apoorva interestingly used. She said musician and independent musician. I want you to kind of, talk a little bit about the difference. I mean, one understands that, but it would be nice to hear from you. Like, uh, she made a specific, she said she wanted to be a musician, but she wasn't sure if she wanted to be an independent musician. Could you sort of highlight the difference between the two, inherent difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I know the answer to that, but again, I mean, I think everyone has done this so far, but I just wanted, before I start, say thank you for having me. And I think all musicians have some level of like an inferiority complex or imposter syndrome or something, but with this group of people, I feel very nervous to be around all of you. I mean, I've known some of you for quite a long time, but yeah, it's a big honor to be here with all of you. Back to your question, I feel like things have changed. I mean, before I was even a thought, I think there was some sort of difference between the two, and it was probably clearer with commercial labels, versus artists who are doing a sort of DIY thing. But I feel like in the last few years, or I don't know, maybe a couple of decades, things have gotten a little bit more blurred, especially in the last couple of years. And maybe it's just a volume thing. There's just more people doing things on their own. But I feel like, to me, what it means is kind of what both you and Apoorva said, which is this, to put it bluntly, like, you're not answerable to anybody, and there's no brief, there's no client. I think maybe that's what it means to me, which is like you serve a vision that is like your own, or one that is shared between you and your friends, or whatever it might be. But I also have another job where
That's what I asked you. Yeah.
I very clearly serve a larger vision, and it's actually been very helpful to me in some ways.
Is that California Wi-Fi giving us trouble? Can any of
Am I
you?
back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay. I was just joking. I live in the Silicon Valley, but my internet connection is unstable. But yeah, no. I was talking to my Berkeley colleagues about this yesterday, which is, you work for yourself and you do your own music, and you have something that you think, you know, I mean, it means something to you and something that resonates and something you know what you want it to sound like, or you know what you want it to look like. But sometimes it's very daunting, and you don't know if it's the right thing to do or if people are going to respond to it. And to have another creative outlet where you have direction and you're part of something larger or something that's not yours. Not that you don't care about it, but you're not taking full ownership of that thing, you know? And it takes a little bit of the pressure off and allows you to create with like a little less, with a little less pressure. And that's been really helpful for me, because it's given me a space to learn a lot, to watch people like Annette, who founded the Indian Ensemble, and you know, watch her arrange and watch her run rehearsals and run productions and you know, steal ideas and process, and then I can apply that to my own music. To have that direction has been really, really helpful. And I've only started really working on my own stuff in earnest in the last year or so, you know.
You know, you used a really interesting word, and that really struck a chord with me, because you know, this whole idea of client and brief, and then things that you do where you're your own boss. Sumesh, I want to ask you this question. You know, I know that you also work with so many other musicians, and you also work with dancers. What has that process been like, where you have you get a brief and then you create something, and then it's a more collaborative experience, versus where you know, Rising is your own, right? It's your own single. So how would you sort of compare the two in terms of the creative process itself?
So to start off, I think it's very close to what Krishna earlier mentioned, Akila. It's like working with the team is just unmatchable. Like the energies of so many people, you know, coming together, and obviously there's a fair amount of you know, like feeling off each other. Like you do something and then someone does something else, and then the whole thing just takes another direction. And half an hour later, you guys find yourself, you know, in a totally different, new, good place that you didn't even think you'd be. And so stuff like that happens. And obviously, with respect to clients, yes, there is something like Rohith said, it's not your vision per se, but it's somewhat a curated vision. Like so you kind of are the facilitator there. You make things happen. Like, for example, when I did the Perumal and Providence album, that was actually for a client. But within the boundaries, I could really experiment, and I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. So I thought this was the opportunity, and I just basically seized it. And I think I did good out of, you know, what I was given. With dancers, it's quite the same, because I'm sorry, it's not quite the same. It's maybe 80-20 there, because at least with Maithili, that I've worked extensively with, and I've learned so much from her, because the beauty with that kind of a process is that she lets you do your thing. Like the composition, or, you know, the whole ideation process starts with everyone together, and so the music and the dance happen together. Sometimes an idea is just what steers things. It doesn't have to be a melody, or it doesn't have to be a step, but it's the idea that, you know, actually steers everything. So that is something that definitely was something very new for me, because I hadn't worked with a contemporary dancer like Maithili before. And but coming to Rising is I'd like to say, you know, it really just came out of, you know, these last 2 years of hardship, if I could say that. Never in my career did I think that I'd be sitting at home 2 years in a row without a tour or without a show. Or, I mean, we did have virtual concerts and all of that, but let's face it, none of us like sitting in our bedrooms and playing a concert. I don't mean this in the wrong way, but we thrive for audience. We thrive for people to listen to us, and that's the only thing we probably want. So Rising, actually, I wanted to put out a song, and I had about 150 you know, completed projects in my Mac, and a lot of my friends were like, you know, people listen to music, you should put this out, you should considering putting this out sometime. And so a lot of my friends made this happen. One very important person was sitting right here, Apoorva, who helped me with the process, and she really did nudge me, you know, to putting it out, and my other friends, you know, who I've mentioned. So that really did speak about how one could, you know, find solace in one's own art, during times like this, and that's basically how Rising came to be. I'm sure all the other songs that follow are going to be much more fun and less philosophical, so to speak. But Rising, yes, was a special one because it I really felt it. I really felt like I should stop, being overwhelmed by this. The other day I was also reading about the social media and how much information you're just fed every day, and 65 to 70% of what you read from day to before you sleep is not necessary, and it just ends up giving you this anxiety. I mean, for no reason, right? So all of that just brought me to a halt, and just like Amrit said, that it meant most satisfaction when I used to when I did this. And I really love to put myself outside the comfort zone, more than anyone. So that's exactly why I sang. So I was like, I'm a percussionist, I'm a mridangist by training, but what's the one thing that people wouldn't expect a percussionist to do, right? And so I sang. So yeah.
Lovely, Sumesh.
Thanks.
Krishna, I want to ask you a question about, I mean, we've done a discussion last year on the importance of, each dancer has a voice of their own. So, and I'm sure each musician has a voice of their own. I want to ask you that the voice that you sort of collaborate with, when you kind of collaborate with other musicians, and your own independent voice, are they distinct from each other?
That's an interesting question. And I'll tell you the way I look at it. When I'm collaborating with musicians on a piece of music, I'm not only collaborating with them, I'm collaborating with all the influences that they have. So it makes a very, very interesting sort of, amalgamation of the best of all the worlds that come together. Right. For example, Amira, me, Amrit, and all of us worked on something which I'm excited for everybody to see. And that was such a unique experience for me because, I was just getting to know them. And so Amrit with all his classical background, and, Amira with just all the world music she's coming from, and me with whatever I have, it was very interesting. And how I see independent music of your own is like an amalgamation of all the sort of influences that you've had over all the years. When I listen to a song, I feel like, damn, I can hear Dave Matthews, Kanye West, and somebody else there. And it's just amazing how the brain just mashes together different things that you went through in your life, and just puts it out there in this form. So yeah. So I just love both processes. It's amazing.
That's interesting. Amrit, I want to ask you a little bit about, is it a conscious sort of process of creating for yourself a unique voice of your own? And I mean that, because we're also unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, the consumption of the arts at this point is happening essentially on social media. So, so to kind of stand out, are musicians also thinking of what is it that I can create that will kind of stand out? And do you find for yourself a target audience of your own? Is that happening? Do you feel, is that a conscious process?
That's again a very interesting question. I think I've had plenty discussions along these lines with some of my friends and musical colleagues, if I can say. Definitely, social media is probably at this point a driving force of creation, which is very superficial if you think about it. And I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, though I'll try.
Yeah.
At many levels, that isn't the best thing, I feel, because if you're, and I'm a victim of this, and I'm sure at some level all of us are, we create reels or things for Instagram, and I just did it, and then I was like, oh my god, I got so many views, and then you get a little bit of a high, and then that drives you to make the next piece of music. That's one. And there is some amount of motivation that stems out of it, which is great, don't get me wrong. But I feel like there is a tangible difference that you notice in yourself when you make music just for your satisfaction, right? I think, like Sumesh said, Rising, and if I may say, it's a phenomenal track, and I'm so blown away by the things that I've grown up listening to Sumesh play for so many musicians, and I've known him as just a mridangist that's like super stellar. And then Rising came out, and then that kind of like highlighted that your capabilities are something that you have to tap into and explore. And I feel like, for example, Rising itself was like a completely new Sumesh in my mind, right? And that's something that's so phenomenal, and that vulnerability I feel like is if you recognize that, I feel like there's more beauty in that driving you than numbers or social media related things, which is great. I feel like they can go hand in hand, and you can find a middle ground somewhere. But yesterday I was talking to Krishna actually, and he said something that was really nice. He said that when you think of music and think of creating music for yourself, uh, you create it from a very different place than if you were to create it for, say, an audience, right? And as performing musicians, I feel like so many of us have been brought up in a classical background. Sumesh, Rohith, Apoorva, all of us. Our driving force is the audience. You're so used to that slap back and that applause or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or even if you were to sing a gig, you look forward to someone's satisfaction, right? It can be very scary to just think of yourself being satisfied by your own music. So if you actually tap into that vulnerability, I feel like there's a lot that can be explored. So
Nice.
in a
Interesting.
sense, I don't know if that answered your question.
No. I mean, it's
It
definitely
took me on another trip.
Rohit, I want to ask you, like, would Manam, your album that is out, I think it was launched 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah, almost 2 weeks. Wow.
2 weeks ago. Yeah, I want to ask you, like, is Manam a sort of a reflection of your unique, um, brand identity or your aesthetic? Is it would you think of it, or would you like look at it like 10 years later and say, no, my aesthetic has changed, which perhaps could happen? But then, would you think at this point that Manam is sort of an extension of your identity as a musician?
Yeah, Manam is an odd one. It's the only the second thing I've done, and it's there were like four things going on sort of all at once that were very different, which was I had my Berkeley job, and that was affected by COVID in its own way, and then I was in this space where the first album that I put out was a collaboration with a very, very close friend of mine, who was a violinist from Iraq/Jordan, and it was like a small crossover kind of thing, very organic, kind of improvised. We rehearsed almost nothing for that album, but with Indian Ensemble, we did so much stuff that was actively arranged. Every note was chosen, every dynamic that you direct a musician to play, everything was done for a specific reason, and so my brain was sort of in that way. And then this Instagram thing happened, which is really, really funny that you brought up social media, which is that I randomly recorded something one day because with Indian Ensemble we were saying this Reels thing is really big, one of us has to test it, and it was weeks of not doing it. And then I just said, okay, I'm just going to record something and post it and just see what the deal is, because I don't use TikTok. I'm very bad at social media. I used to have calendar reminders to post because I would forget. And then this Reel thing got a lot of response. And then I was like, okay, I've been practicing very irregularly. Manam is sort of going up and down where, well, I'll have bouts of writing with my mom and then no writing. So I said, let me give myself some direction and say once a week, I'll set myself an achievable goal of recording 30 seconds of something that I like and want to practice. And this thing just kind of went out of control, which worked out in an interesting way because with my first album, we basically didn't do any marketing. Like Apoorva said, you just learn all these things as you go. And so when we released it, we were like, what do we do now? Like, how do you pitch to a playlist? Like, are you supposed to write to people and say, listen to this? Like, what do you do? And no one really listened to it, or a few people did. And so with this, suddenly there was a largish audience on social media.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, if 5% of them listen to this album, which is nothing like the Reels that I do, which are all mostly covers of popular songs.
Correct.
Now it's like, and typically things that are fast and social media-y.
Work for social media. Yeah.
Now it's going to be like all these very slow meditative things that talk about extremely serious topics.
Yeah.
So it was like these two things all at once. But then somehow Manam was separate from all of that. It just was its own bubble. And I think somewhere deep down, I knew that I had to do something with my mom, who is also my guru. And it just felt like we're at home, we're together, we're talking about things, Black Lives Matter, caste, we're talking about all sorts of things. And our family has very intense discussions about these things. And it just felt like, okay, Amma and I need to do something together. And she was writing, I had things in English. I said, let's just do something. And it was one song, and then it was another song. And then it was like, do they go together? I don't even know. Can you package this as
an
one cohesive thing?
Yeah.
And we said, you know what? It came from the same place for us. And that was what it was for. It was just for us to process. And then at a certain point we said, okay, we're going to release this. And to this day, I'm still nervous for what people are going to think, even though we've gotten a lot of good responses.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit of a return to like more classical things for me. I haven't done a kacheri in like 10 years. I think I was telling, I don't know how many of you know Vignesh Venkatraman, he's a Mridangist, and I was telling him many, many years ago, there's much better people to do Carnatic music than me. And I have such a different, weirdly wired brain at this point. So it was a challenge for me to go back and say, okay, we're just going to write a Tilana and sing a Tilana, and that's what it's going to be. I don't know that I'll do something like this in the future, but it felt like not a box that had to be ticked, but I spent so much of my life learning, singing, listening to only Carnatic music at home, and it felt like something that, like, it satisfied like a very big part of me that now can like relax, and live its own life, maybe without me. I don't know.
I mean, it's a gorgeous album, Rohit. So, congratulations on that. Apoorva, I want to ask you about intuition. And, Rohit mentioned something that got me thinking about how also being on your own can also be a very daunting sort of experience, right? It's
Right,
also
right.
lonely, like you don't know, like, is it going to work?
Yeah.
How much should I be marketing it? How do I market it? Did you sort of go through all these questions as well with
Yeah.
intuition?
Yeah, actually during the composing process, because wasn't planned that it's going to be an album called, like, having all these songs in it with all these styles in it and everything. So I think, as I said, like, each song was an experience at that point in time. Some things happened when a guest artist just came in. I listened to his Puerto Rican jazz music, and then it just happened, or something happened when I was crying in the practice room, not even able to play like one thing properly on the piano, with everyone in the other practice rooms like going crazy and nuts. Like, so I think like with all of that happening, like, I didn't realize the fact that the music that I'm making or whatever it is probably not something that can relate to everybody, generally, right? So I didn't think about the like releasing part of things or how people will respond to anything, right? It was just a natural process that whatever resonated with me and my heart at that point in time, I was just going with it. And even I thought then that maybe things might change, I might change up some of the parts of the songs. But I think later, when I started realizing after graduating that, okay, I need to put all these things out slowly, and then I realized that let it just be the way it is. And even though a lot of people might not respond, because there are some things that may not relate to people, like it's not always easy listening music, right? Or it's not like any sort of pop culture thing, or it's so different in every way. And I started to realize that do whatever I can to market it at the best of my to the best of my abilities, but don't worry about the response so much, because this is like an experience that you're sharing more than my best work, or I wish that it reaches everybody that it needs to. That wasn't I never thought about how to cut through in order to reach the maximum audience base for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I did, I'm so grateful for the love that it received, because I was so nervous, because it was not only new to others, it was new to me myself. And I had no clue like what, it would sound like at the end and how people would react. And I think, but marketing wise, I mean, I just trusted myself, and I did some promos, and I ran some ads. I asked all my friends to share it. Things that I think we all know, like posting at the right times, consistency, things like that. But during my Berkeley experience, I didn't really post consistently because I was going through all of that learning and everything. And then later kind of getting out of that bubble and being like, okay, now everyone else has to hear this. How's that gonna happen? That was more of a, yeah, but it was a learning process. And even I think it's something that we'll have to keep figuring out, because there are obviously new things that are trending like as we go, right? And so
lovely. I mean, firsts always do feel a bit like intimidating.
Yeah.
Amira, I want to ask you a little bit about, you went to Berkeley as well, right? And I want to ask you, does going through like music education in an institution like Berkeley, does it also sort of prepare you for a sort of rigor that independent music demands? And I'm curious also to know, what is your rigor like? I mean, it surely can't be easy. Like, I mean, I work on my own, and I know that I have to like say that, okay, I have to set for myself like these, literally like Rohith said, right? Set like a calendar and say I have to post at this time. I have to do that, because just motivating yourself to perform all the time. Amira, are you there?
She didn't like her question.
She didn't like my question, Amira. Okay. She's like, you asked me about rigor, I'm just going to vanish. Okay, maybe we will. Maybe Amrit, why don't you talk about the idea of rigor, and how does an independent musician kind of do you have like a structure, if at all? How important is that structure, and what is your structure like?
For sure. I I think Rohith said it nicely. Musician and then independent musician. That was Rohith, right?
Apurva said that
Oh,
first.
Apoorva, I'm so sorry. Everybody's saying so many fascinating things. I'm losing track of who said what. But yeah, I think that's really interesting because I've never thought of it as that. But I think Rohit said something about clients, right? Yeah, sorry, that was a parallel that I drew. Anyway, that's a personal thought that just got revealed. But I feel like when you create that division in your head, I feel like your rigor changes, right? So as a musician that has, say, a commissioned piece of work, then your set goals are very external. They're like, okay, you have to do this, and then you have to do that, and then you have to do something else. As an independent musician, I feel like at this point where I am, everything's a little gray, and I'm still figuring out. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'll take a little of this from here and a little of that from there. So, other than practice and maybe building on my skill set, I feel like the whole concept of what I do when is still very abstract, which is a little scary, to be honest. It's technically easier to do a piece of work that is commissioned to you because you're detached, right?
Yeah.
You know what exactly you have to do. But when you do something for yourself, then you're putting in that little bit of your heart in it, and that can actually sometimes be a little tricky. So in terms of you said rigor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of honestly, I don't know if I can answer that question as black and white.
That's okay. I mean, I love the
this is what I feel. You know, I mean, I just feel like you can't really be like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Amira's
back. Maybe
are you ready to answer this question, or are you going to do the vanishing act again? Oh, she's frozen now.
She's frozen.
Okay, does anyone else want to respond to the question? We have a whole bunch of questions from the audience, but I have a couple of questions. Like, I want to ask Krishna this. Krishna, could you talk a little bit about I mean, would you think that being an independent musician and also making it work financially is tough. And in some ways, would you think that being an independent musician is a prerogative of the privileged?
I can answer that. Do you want to ask Amira her question? I think she's back
Amira?
while we have her.
Amira, do you want to respond to the rigor question? Krishna, go ahead. It's okay. I think,
Okay. So see the financials
Am
of
I
independent
back?
music
Oh God.
yeah, you
feels like an omnipresent Amira is around.
yeah, like
Sometimes
Sorry,
speaking. So-
sorry.
Amira, go ahead. If you can, we can hear you. Why don't you
yeah,
answer?
Amira, it's okay if you can turn off your video and speak. That's all right. If you think that's working, that's okay.
No, it's not. I don't think the internet is the problem. The light keeps going off. So if the light goes off, then the audio also goes off. But anyway, I'll try. So can you please repeat the question? I'm so
So
sorry
I
I
just
missed
want
that.
to ask you a little bit about, just being an independent musician. Do you like you went to Berkeley and did like going through a course like that in an institution like that? Did it sort of prepare you for the rigor that being an independent musician in a sense demands?
I think going to Berkeley, for me, the main takeaway was how to interact with different kinds of musicians, and also one thing that I didn't know how to do, which was how to talk about what you do. And I think that directly correlates with what you have to be as an independent musician, which is you're doing your talking for yourself. Of course, if you can still be an independent musician and have a team and have a manager. That doesn't make you you're still independent. But I think that's one of the most important qualities to have as an independent musician, and that's something that Berkeley gave me. Everyone is frozen for me, so I don't know if I'm still talking. If I am and I'm okay, can you please say yes?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. So yeah, I think that is one thing that is really important. That was very important for me to learn. Yeah, and how to interact with different kinds of people, because I think one of the most, again, important thing as a musician, not independent or whatever, is that you have to know how to build relationships. And I think that's the most important thing, apart from your skill set and your artistry and how you have to keep building on that. But how do you interact with people? How do you engage with people? And I think being a part of a global culture like that, which also music represents, is really important. And I think that's what Berkeley gave to me with respect to how I would handle being an independent musician.
lovely.
If that makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Amira. Over to you, Krishna.
Okay, yeah. So can you repeat your question again, please?
Okay, that's interesting because I also like blanked.
I know what most of it is about, but I don't want to go on a tangent. That's why.
Do you remind me what I asked you, because I kind of.
You were asking about how independent music,
Yeah, I asked you if being an independent musician, is it financially sustainable, and therefore, like, is it in a certain way like a prerogative of the privileged?
Okay. So in all honesty, I'd like to, in my own sense, this is only what I believe. I don't claim this to be the truth or anything. I believe music exists with and without publishing. There's some amazing folk artists out there who play every day for their, daily food and everything, who are more independent musicians than I am. And, so I would like to call myself a musician who publishes his music independently. And I guess that's what's been come to be known as an independent musician. So I believe music exists beyond whatever, social or economic status of it.
Yeah.
But music publishing maybe is a different question. And regarding how we, generate a return on investment and stuff like that, I'm still very new to the game, and I'm still figuring out how the whole streaming OTT happens and how YouTube and how the YouTube returns come out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I definitely believe, like, once you start creating a body of work that garners a certain following of listeners who are interested in stuff like that, I really believe that will lead to things that will ensure that your income and your livelihood is intact. And especially after COVID, and I'm really hoping to go play a few live shows, because God knows we all miss that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sumesh, I just want to ask you one question, then we will take questions from the audience. We have about 5, 6 questions. I just want to ask you that in a certain way, and this was a conversation that was, a lot of people were discussing this in the dance world. But would you think that the having like understanding technology and being really savvy with technology in a certain way also puts you in a sort of, gives you an edge in terms of being able to uh, create music? I mean, would you agree that the more savvy you are, and if you're able to like understand home recording and how it works and all of that, would you have perhaps an edge over someone who's probably...
Absolutely, Akila. I'd like to take off of Krishna's answer, because it all really comes down to publishing, right? This question itself. So if you have all of these, I mean, obviously everyone has all of these tools at their disposal, but how savvy you are with it and how quick and, up to date you are with it probably proves how accessible you are in terms of your work reaching your audience and stuff like that. So, I mean, I already feel old. I mean, I've been trying to put out a song for God knows how many years, and I just did that like last month. So after a point, it's all also, like someone mentioned, I think it was Amrit, obviously the reels and all of those, social media platforms that you have today for all of those tidbits that you just put out, and people grab that, and you suddenly are in the limelight and you grab that attention. But it's all after a point, it's all slightly overwhelming. At least it's for me, because I keep up for a week or two, but after that it's like life goes on, and I'm like, yeah, reels are great, 14,000 plays are great, but after a point it's like I need to get to my second song. So I really think it's helpful if you're savvy. If you're not, and if you are really committed about putting your stuff out, I really think it pays off to take time and get it sorted, get it out of the way. I would think that as investment as well. It's not something, you learn to, like Apoorva said, you make music, but you don't know what to do with it after a point. So I think it's as important to, especially as an independent musician, it's very important to know that. It's very important to sell yourself, sell your music. Then again, it's how much you want to do it. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Rohith and Apoorva, could you like just give tell us as consumers of your music, what would you think that we must do to really support the ecosystem of independent music and musicians? Rohith, what can we do and what can we do better?
That's a interesting question. I don't know. I have solutions. But I think things have gotten complicated by streaming in general. And I think one thing that I have learned, actually through my work with Berkeley, is value for my own time and for other people's time. I have done, I'm sure we all have, done a lot of shows where you don't get paid, or you do it in exchange for food or beverages. I mean, I've played shows in exchange for many things, shirts, but realizing that I was talking to someone about this. People say, if you love something, then you shouldn't do it for free. It's actually because you love it so much that you shouldn't do it for free. It's such a big part of you. You've spent years curating whatever you have, and to give that as an offering to someone is huge. So one thing I always like to do is I'll always try to pay somebody for their time, no matter what. And there have been a lot of cases in the last couple of years where I'm not able to afford a friend of mine, and that's okay. Their time is valuable. And I think more people should be I think people are getting better at understanding that an artist's time is valuable, are valuable. But that's one thing that I feel like is still lacking. And also, I mean, this is just like logistical, but I really think people should be signing contracts. I think it protects everybody. I think we've all gotten bit by things before. You know, we play with our friends, right? And I think a lot of art comes from personal relationships, and we tend to live in that space a lot. But it's easy to forget that this is an industry at the end of the day, whether we like it or not. And to protect ourselves and our friends is hugely important. And you know, I've actually found relationships with my artist friends become stronger when we talk about a lot of these things. And I think those two things are really helpful, especially indie musicians can get, you know, left in the dust with a lot of this stuff. When you work with big people, they make you sign this and you're suddenly in some contract and they send you forms at the end of the year and you don't know what to do with it. But when you're with your friends, things can be a little murky. But those are, I mean, just suddenly what came to mind when you said that.
I mean,
it's been my big thing for the last year, which is just like pay musicians and sign contracts.
lovely. Thank you. I'm also going to make a note of that. I mean, yeah, thank you for that. Apoorva?
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing. It pretty much he summed it up. Maybe another question. I mean, it's the same thing I was going to say.
Okay. Actually, I wanted to just sort of wrap this conversation, and Apoorva, you could probably answer the first question that we've got from the audience. But I wanted to just share this one really interesting piece of information that I read about 6 skills that all independent musicians need today, and it's branding and marketing, number 1. Community building and fan base supporters, number 2. 3, live video streaming. 4, home recording. 5, digital distribution, so doing away with the gatekeepers. And finally, entrepreneurship. I mean, we didn't get a chance to speak about entrepreneurship, but we've got a whole bunch of questions, and I don't want to not, answer them. So there's a question from Pranati Sompali. Maybe Apoorva, you could respond to that.
Sure.
Is there any particular point one needs to reach in terms of knowledge consumption to be able to make music on their own? That's a great question. Yeah.
Honestly, when I started, like, I didn't know anything. I was learning along the way. And I think the best way, I mean, of course, you need to keep informing yourselves. You need to keep asking questions. You need to keep, you need to keep talking to people and, figuring things out as you go. Even today,
Right.
like, I'm not, when it comes to all these things, there's so much to learn. Like, sometimes I'll just call Sumesh and say, how do you do this in Logic? How do you do that? Like, it's sometimes like, I'm still even now, like, researching a lot about, what are the new what are the new ways to do these things, or like, what are the easy, I think being smart is important, not just working really hard, like when you don't have to sometimes. And even if you don't know how to do things, and you have a lot on your plate, figure out how to get it done somehow. Like, for example, for me, initially, when it comes to technology and me are really not friends, right? In the beginning, like at Berkeley, it was so overwhelming that, when we had all these Pro Tools classes, Ableton classes, I was going mad. And I just, it was too much with the music as well, right? So it's like everything together. And so I started, understanding the important things. Like, so, okay, I'm probably more of a acoustic live performer, right? I'm not going to, at least back then, I wasn't making my own tracks. So what was more important for me was to understand basic things, how to just record myself, learn like basic EQing, basic compression, basic reverb, and then how do I tell someone how I want to sound? What are the terms? What are the ways to communicate certain things to get things done, even if it's from a friend who's an expert at it, right? And learning that way helped. And they also would come to me for things that they wanted to learn. And I think like those things really help along the way, right? Asking questions really help, because you never know. A lot of people give you lots of like valuable, insights and simple tricks and this and that. So in fact, I didn't even know how to consolidate a session. 1 week ago, I called Amrit and had to send him something 5 times because of that. But, like, I think and it's so funny because I'm like, oh my God, I just graduated a year ago and here I am. I can't even send someone a question. But I think as we like ask questions and we're not like scared, we're all learning anyway. So
Yeah.
just don't worry that, oh, I need to know this much before,
Yeah.
you know.
But it's having to done so many different hats at the same time, right? It can definitely be like overwhelming. Like, hats off to you guys. Does anybody else want to respond to that question? Add something to what she has said, or can we move forward? Okay. So there is a question from Vasundhara Gupta, and she says, "You guys are an awesome bunch. Music and social media. If you're an artist, musician in this day and age, do you also have to be a social media influencer? How much do followers and likes matter in the real world?" Wow. Who wants to take that question? I mean, we could have a couple
I
of
can start.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I think I have found from my friends who have largish followings that in a lot of cases, followers don't necessarily translate to real life. I guess you can say when you perform, they may not translate, and that's part of that is just a result of people being spread out. But I think the people that consume content on social media versus, say, art on other platforms are very different people. Even myself, like the version of myself that is that like scrolls on Instagram versus the version of myself that listens to playlists and things on Spotify. They're two very different people.
Yeah.
And I think people go to social media for different reasons. And there's probably a part of you that feels like, not probably, there is a part of you, I can attest to that feels gross when you do certain things. But then I think, okay, I get something, whether high value or low value, however you want to, assign it value. I get something or the other from things that I see on social media. For example, Praveen Sparsh is an incredible mridangist who's been posting these crazy, who just posts small compositions with funny or cool visuals.
Yeah.
And I get something awesome out of that. Or Manjuna, BC Manjunath posts random things, 8-second videos, 1-minute videos, 5-minute videos, and I get something out of that. So I can't get on my high horse and say someone else is not getting that same thing from whatever I'm posting, whatever it might be. If one person thinks it's cool, that I've done something for somebody, and I think the influencer game it feels like a different industry entirely. When someone shares your music, when I share someone else's music, you don't know if they're going to listen to it. People will tell you to look at some stats. I don't even know how to look at half the stats. I think someone said this, and maybe everyone has said this in some way. You just do what you do to satisfy your creative spirit, and someone will receive it, you hope, and that's enough. I think there's a part of all musicians that's a little bit selfish. I think there's an ego part to all of music, just the performance aspect in and of itself and needing to feed off another group of people. I think it's okay to want that. But at the end of the day, you can only do what feels good to you. And I think as long as you feel okay about it, then you're good.
Rohith, that's such like a spiritual take on this whole thing. Like, fabulous. I mean, I love it. Does anyone else want to add to that? Sumesh, Krishna, anybody?
I want to say something.
Amira, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm no influencer. I don't even have that many followers, nothing like that on social media. But I can say one thing, which is it's important to be at some level, even though you're presenting something that, if you're an artist profile, for example, and you're putting out music, which the intention is to gather more followers or, to get this music out to more and more people. The basis of that is that you want to present something that is you, right? Because at the end of the day, you want people to like what they're viewing. You want the person to follow you and your work. So I think at some level, the way it's presented maybe can be thought about, which I still don't do, but I think I should. it can be presented in a better way that's more viewable, that's more consumable, I guess. But at the same time, something funny is that I put up this video recently. I was in my grandma's house and I put up this video, which was of a shabad that I did in my own way because that's how I sing it. And I didn't even put my whole face, like it was half my face, because I can't put a shabad there on social media without covering my head, and I didn't feel like doing it. So I said, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. I don't want to get criticism from anyone. And even though it didn't show any, it was not, it didn't look good, the video per se, but it was the most reaction, or what is it called? Involvement. I forgot. There's some word on social media,
Engagement?
on Instagram. Engagement. There you go. Engagement that video got. And it was just crazy to me. I never imagined, that something like that would happen. So I think at some level, you present something that is good and authentic, and where what you're saying and the way you put it out makes sense to you, then I feel like maybe it has the potential to make sense to a large group of people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, good content has the ability to sort of cut through. Just a couple of questions from Mira. She says, Mira Sampat, she says, does being an independent performer on this social media make you feel one of the ordinary or the one extraordinary? Maybe Krishna, Sumesh, Amrit, Apoorva, one of you could respond to this.
I just wanted to kind of connect this maybe a little bit with what Mira said. So I think I love what she said, and I think I definitely have been a part of this issue, and I think maybe other people can hopefully relate that, initially when I just got an Instagram many years ago, I always had this thing that my image on Instagram should be this professional version of me. And so all my friends, right, like the way I am normally away from Instagram is so different, right, in so many ways. I'm so much more outgoing. I'm so much more, I let go so much more, right? And I think that gap between the person you are off of social media and the person you are on social media, like the more that decreases, the more a lot of things really just, all the anxiety can calm down a little bit more, because you're just being yourself without, caring about
how you're going to be perceived.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, obviously easier said than done, but at least to a certain extent, like being this whole other person, that's what I think internally gets us worried, right? Because it's hard, we have to keep up to that, and sometimes we don't even know who that person is in so many little ways, right? So I think and it goes down to a lot of things. Like, we're recording a reel, we don't need to do 25 takes for a 30-second reel. We like that itself loses the purpose of why we're doing it or what we're doing, I think. So just doing it for the love of music, even if a couple takes or a couple, you can be professional up there, but maybe also have that little bit of yourself too, where you can just anytime talk to anyone, like on a video, without having to think so much, or put out things like because you think it sounds good more than looks good, or things like that, like,
and a couple of bloopers here and there also.
Yeah, just be yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Does anyone else also want to respond? Or
Yeah, I'd just like to say one thing. I think based off of what Apoorva, Amira, actually everybody, what all of you said, I think we all go through this kind of social media curve of where initially we have like, at the end of the day, we're all putting out stuff that I'm sure we do enjoy at some level, but also we are keeping in mind that there is an audience that we're catering to, right? So I think that dichotomy often kind of puts me in a similar situation that Apoorva was talking about, and I look at it as two things. One is it's a given that anything that we put out, I mean, ideally, in an ideal situation, you only put out stuff that you enjoy, right? You're not going to put out something that you don't enjoy. So if you tick that box, I feel like it's good. And second is if you put out a piece of music that you enjoy and there is qualitative response, I feel like that is often,
better.
Is a misconception that the more the numbers, the more the appreciation. I feel like So how I looked at it is like a while back I released a song of mine, and I think it was like my first original or something like that. And it in my head I was like, I would have, my ego was like, oh, if I get like a, I don't know, 10,000 views or 15,000, I'm just throwing numbers at you. If I got such views, I would have, I would have been really excited. And I feel like one thing you've learned after being on social media for a while is you really don't know what gets picked up and what people like, right?
Yeah.
So I put in, say, on a scale of 0 to 100, if I put, say, 80% of my heart into a particular piece that I expect to reach a certain amount, and it was underwhelming, the response, then I'd feel that much more than like if I put out a reel or something that didn't take as much effort. So one interesting way for me to kind of make myself feel better is if a video, say, gets 5,000 views or 3,000 or even 1,000 views. If you think of 1,000 people in one room, that's a crazy number, right?
Yeah.
Or 2,000 people in a room. So if you're thinking of qualitative, and if there are responses that kind of congruent to the number of views that you have, then I feel like that's a good pat on your back, that you've kind of done something that people enjoy. So,
No, absolutely. I really like this whole take on qualitative response versus engagement that's measured in terms of numbers. Um, uh, Sumesh, it's your turn now, okay? There's a question. It says, any new move related to, I don't know who has asked this questions. I'm sorry. The question is, any new move related to fine arts is usually, if not always, because of passion towards the respective art. Usually not because one expects a certain level of achievement. Keeping that in mind, how easy or tough is it to take such a decision? To move on paths of the least chosen. Last year, on the same date, the Times of India came up with a data analysis stating that the field of the fine arts was the least lucrative. Keeping that in mind, I'm asking you this question. Would you want me to repeat the question?
No, just getting it straight. So wait, is the person talking about the choice of being a musician as uh, making the choice to take it up as profession? Is it what was?
Yeah, I think she says any new move related to fine arts is
Mhm.
usually, if not always, because of passion.
Ah,
Okay.
mhm.
Keeping that in mind, how easy or tough is it to take such a decision to move on paths that are least chosen?
It's. I mean, also when I answer this, it's purely and completely my experience, and
Yeah.
it's a very very valid question. I'm sure all of us, resonate with it at some level, because I did have to take a decision, and I did have to take a plunge to what we're talking about.
Pursue it as a profession. That's what she meant.
Yes,
Actually.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. Very true. So, even like way back in school, right when I was done with my 12th, and I had to move into some sort of graduation or college. I really didn't want to do it. I still think back about it, and all I wanted to do was just get into mridangam, like full fledged, like just play concerts, practice, and whatever comes along with it, right? uh, but then you know how it's the general, like the household tries to sort of look out for you, and you're like, you know what, just finish the graduation, everything will fall in place. Just do one BCom or whatever.
Yeah.
So I did a BCom, and I was detained in all 6 sems because I had about 18% of attendance, but it's okay. And then I went on to actually taking up music, but this is not something I've shared in public, Akila, but I have no problem saying this now, because I feel I'm slightly grown up. But back then I was terrified, but I didn't show it out. I mean, obviously, everyone around me wanted to study more, wanted to take up a job. It wasn't even just about academics. It was just about taking up a job so that my income was stable, taking up a job because I had a monthly salary, right? So every fifth of the month, you have some money in your bank,
Yeah.
and you don't have to
Going to
worry.
the bank. Yeah.
But and I definitely don't belong to the privileged. So back when I had to take the decision, it was quite terrifying. But obviously, I mean, we don't show that out, right? Um, but I've had days when I've had to save up, and sacrifice dinners so that I'd have money to pay for breakfast, and that'll be a whole new day for me, and whole new day of opportunities. So yes, it was really difficult, but I really am glad that, you know, it's like coming back to the first part of the question, it most definitely is passion. That's what drives you, and I think that makes all the difference, right?
No,
You
absolutely.
cannot hate what you do and still be here.
Yeah.
You cannot dislike what you do and still be here. You have to, at some level, I think, you can constantly be working on it, and like you said at the start of this conversation, it's a journey. It's a very, very beautiful and long and you know, just powerful journey, but you have to love it from the bottom of your heart, like, to be able to do something like that. Like, it's not a switch on switch off button. It's not like switch on, okay, I'm going to be creative, and then like 5 to 9 I'm just going to switch it off and I'm fine. You're thinking about it 24 hours a day. You don't sleep, you don't eat. Sometimes you're like, sometimes all you do is eat and sleep. Sometimes you hate all of your work, but sometimes you think there's this creative juice that, you know, that's just pumping. Like, 1 week you're just churning out songs by the hour, but then this whole phase 2 months later that comes down, and you're like, you want to trash everything you come up with, and you don't regard yourself a musician, and all of these eccentricities and the mood swings and all of that. I've been through it all, and I still go through it all, but I think the one thing that still grounds me is the fact that I can go to it and pick up my mridangam and just play and stop all of these thoughts inside your head, and
Absolutely.
it most definitely silences it all. So yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say two things. Sumesh, is thank you for sharing and sharing it on a public forum. It really means a lot. And also, I mean, I'm so glad you took the plunge. Otherwise, how would we know what a fantastic musician you are? Like, so thank you for doing that. I mean,
Good.
thank you for all the music that all of you make. There's just one question, and maybe Krishna could respond to that. It's from Sindhu. And she says, how are you able to communicate how you want to sound now? Is it something that you've developed over a period of time?
Um, actually, I don't understand the question. You mean when I'm working with somebody as a performer or something like that?
Okay, I mean, she's
If
probably listening,
it's,
that she will probably respond. But her exact question, as I'm reading it, says, "How are you able to communicate how you want to sound now?" I think it's sort
I
of
think
similar to the
maybe
question that we
Apoorva
asked.
might want to take this one
Yeah,
because she was talking about something like this earlier.
sure. Yeah, Apoorva, do you want me to read the question?
Yeah, I think I'm able to relate, like, as in when I mentioned that, you know, if you don't know how to do something, then try and explain to someone how you want to sound, right? Or, you know, if you're sending someone your track for them to mix or master, like how and if they send it to you and you know, like, what you want to sound like, but you don't know how to tell them how to change it to that, to get it to that level from what they sent it to you. I
Okay,
think you're
sorry, Apoorva. She means when you're working on with someone in a collaboration. That's what she means.
Oh, okay, Krishna, you can pick that.
Okay. He says you.
I thought what she was saying was very interesting. Maybe you can finish and then I can add something to
Finish and
that.
then he can add on to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think you need to, first of all, like, patiently sit down with anything that, you know, you just randomly record, right? And you know, you need to, first of all, maybe actually sit with a friend who can kind of show you the different ways you can sound, right? He or she, sorry, will kind of move around your whatever the EQ, like basically you listen, right? You just close your eyes and listen, and then you kind of compare, and then you then understand what he's or she is doing, and that's, it's just learning through, like, kind of asking questions and sitting, and these things you have to only do by ear, right? You have to hear and then relate, right? And as you then maybe for the next thing you record, you try to do it yourself similarly, and then it might not sound the same way, right? But you can slowly start adjusting things and yourself, and then you can keep asking questions like that, and asking, okay, why is it different this, like, now? And maybe there was a different instrument in the whole track, or maybe there are so many reasons as to why it's not the exact same, like, switch on switch off thing, right? And so ask questions. That's what I do, and I still do shamelessly. So that really helps a lot, because Otherwise, you can't Google these things to that extent, right? When it comes to hearing your sound and how you like to be, like your tone, your sound, your all of that. Whether you want to, So just ask questions and sit with someone who's good with that and who knows and who can help you and who cares about you and your music and who
Genuinely
and
care. Yeah. Krishna, do you want to add something to that?
I think what she says is wonderful. I think she attacked the core of what it should be. And what I learned is adding to what she said about, finding out with another person how you want to sound. A very interesting experience for me recently is where I had my song arranged by a different team and then I performed with them. And I learned that it's nice to have a little bit of humility where you sort of see yourself from their eyes and they might see something in you that you never knew you had, And I had a beautiful experience where another producer, another engineer turned my song and my sound into something that I couldn't envision, And I think having that sort of open-mindedness to another person's palette and another person's sensibilities is sometimes can be wonderful. And but I've struggled equally with wanting a certain kind of sound, and I'm self-taught, so my theory is only now like improved. So back then I couldn't tell somebody I want this song to sound like it's in sepia, like the color tone. And then I later, after I started producing, realized that, you just had a tape machine and you could add some vinyl crackle, it sounds like sepia, So, but I think it's an interesting experience that every musician should go through. And I think finding the right people who are like good-hearted, like she said, who want to give you the best sound that you have, I think that's very important. So I think it's good to work with good people, Like, I think that's all I want to add, what she said.
Absolutely. I mean, there have been like so many fantastic takeaways for me personally from this conversation. But I think the biggest takeaway is just the sense of uh, collaboration that all of you seem to sort of share, the collaborative spirit with which all of you, so many of you seem to know each other. And Amrit, thank you for introducing me to so many wonderful musicians when I reached out to you. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking time off. I promised you all that I would wrap in an hour. Clearly, I suck at keeping my promises. It's like 1.5 hours, 90 minutes. But I think I could have easily, we could easily go on for another half an hour, but I'm going to call it a wrap. And thank you so much to everyone and to everybody who joined and asked such fantastic questions. I mean, no conversation is complete without an audience participating. And Amrit, to go back to your point about qualitative, response to anything, I always, like, every time like I have audience asking me questions, I feel like, okay, this has been a good conversation, and I have not been the only one asking questions. So truly, tonight's been that. Thank you to everybody who joined, and
Thank you. I think it's
Akila, we should have a
Thank you.
part 2, I feel.
absolutely.
Absolutely. I vote for that.
Part two, all of
In
you
real life.
in real life, yeah.
Real life, yeah.
Yeah, in real
For some
life,
really
or
good coffee.
coffee or something else, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for organizing
Narasus.
this.
Thank you.
Such a nice
Thank you,
time.
Amrit.
Thank you. Yeah,
Akila.
really.
Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Good
you, Akil.
night, and have a good day, Rohit. Bye-bye.
Good day.
Night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.